Hi, everyone. I just wanted to quickly try something a little bit different. Um, One of the things that I have had questions about or that I work with students on is how do they come up with their own ideas, right? How do you come up with your own game idea? Because a lot of times, I'll teach people the coding aspect of making games, but, of course, it's easy to follow a tutorial that tells you exactly what features and how to code them and all of that stuff. But coming up with your own ideas, I think, is sometimes a little bit harder. So I wanted to start a new video series talking a little bit about that. And so this is um, the first edition or the first installment of that series. And what we're going to be talking about today is thinking about games that you like. All right. Now, some of it might seem a little bit obvious, but bear with me. So, the first thing I want you to do if you are trying to work on coming up with game ideas is think of maybe the top five or so, maybe 3 to 5 games that you enjoy playing yourself, right? Um, and, they can be games that you are, you know, obsessed with and that you play for hours at a time. They can be maybe casual games that you play here and there, for a couple minutes at a time. Maybe like more casual games, but that you still enjoy. They can be from any genre or category. Right now, just start with picking 5 games that you like. All right. And write them down in a list. All right, so the first example that I'm going to share with you guys, I'm going to just pick a game. And lately I've been playing an older game called Fantasy Life for Nintendo 3DS. And let me just show you guys that game really quickly. It's a role-playing game, an RPG. And basically, the idea is that you get to play a character where you can choose, what is it? I think like 12 different um, jobs, different uh, jobs or fields that you can work in, right? And it can be things like a fisher, a hunter, a cook. Um, what are some of the other ones? Like a blacksmith and things like that. And you can get to play all of those different jobs in advance as you go through the game. So that's the game that I'm going to talk about for my first example. So also just really fun game if you can get a copy of it for 3DS. Highly recommend it if you're into RPGs and games like that. Okay, so that's the game that I'm starting out with choosing. All right. Next, think about why do you like those games that you chose? All right, what aspects of the game do you enjoy the most? And so right now, we're going to focus on the positive things because while it is good to think about, okay, well, what are things that I would improve about the game or things that, maybe could have been done better or that, I would change. We can talk about that later, but right now we're going to focus on the good stuff. All right. So for me, with Fantasy Life, some of the things I like about the game is that there's a lot of exploration. So I'm really into games where you can explore. I'm really into like open world games, things like that, right? Um, Anytime there's like a new area in the game, sometimes I spend so much time exploring that I don't even continue the main storyline because I'm so focused on exploring. So that's something that I like. Another thing that I really like is that there's a lot of like clearly defined goals and achievements throughout the game, mostly in the form of quests, right, or objectives. So you can go around in the game and you can talk to different people throughout the world, and they might have requests for you to do, like, hey, I'd really like like a pumpkin pie, for instance. So you can either go see if you can buy a pumpkin pie, or you can become a cook and learn how to make a pumpkin pie. Or, there's a bunch of evil radishes that are taking over the Western Plains, and I need somebody to clear them out. So, um, you have to maybe defeat like 10 evil radishes and you get a prize or something like that. So, um, for me, I like that sort of thing. I don't know if that's some kind of a statement about me being some kind of overachiever in real life, but I like being able to have that hook of, hey, there's a list of quests items or quests to do. It makes me feel accomplished. So yeah, that's another thing that I like personally. Also the ability to make progress, even if I only have a little bit of time. And, a lot of us are really busy. I know I definitely am, and I don't always have as much time to sit down and game as I would like. So I feel like, especially like when you go back and look at the quests and the goals, where, all right, so like if I have to beat 5 evil radishes, depending on how rare those radishes are, I can knock that out pretty quickly and make some kind of progress in the game, right? Without having to take a whole lot of time. And then a lot of times, if you stack up a lot of those quests, you can make a lot of progress with even just 30 minutes of game time, right? I also really like being able to open up different gameplay opportunities through mastering different skills. Like there's an example right now where there's like a dragon, um, like up in the icy mountains, and one of the quests as a mercenary or fighter, um, if you take that job, is that you have to defeat that dragon, right? And one of the tips that I got from one of the non-playable characters in the game was that you can beat this dragon if you have a particular set of armor or equipment, right? Or a weapon, or I forget what it is, like a sword or something like that. And he kind of drops a hint, well, if you're a blacksmith, you can make that item and beat the dragon. And if you don't go the blacksmith route, you might be able to find a different way to beat the dragon. Maybe you over level, level up and get really strong or something like that, or get further in the game and get better weapons from stores. But you also have the option of taking the blacksmith route. All right, so that's the kind of stuff that's fun for me in this particular game. Okay, so the next part is, now that you have looked at some of those aspects or features, what of those out of that list can you add to a game of your own? All right. So there's a couple of things here. If you've already got some experience coding or creating games, try to think of how you can incorporate those things based on the skill level that you have, right? So if you've already coded before, hopefully um, you have some idea of, yeah, that this seems like a really simple feature. I can see in my mind how I can implement it, or you might look at it and say, oh, I don't know about that right now, at my current level. So with RPGs, for example, Fantasy Life is a role-playing game or RPG, and it's a little bit more complicated. So some of the things that I'm talking about that I like might be a little bit harder, right? So, for instance, exploration, that also includes being able to understand how to make like in-game maps and different big levels, right? And like level planning is a skill, right? Maybe you're not that comfortable with making a good in-game world that people can explore, right? Or being able to open different gameplay opportunities through different skills. It takes some work to have 12 different job classes, from an implementation point of view, right? So that might be a little bit beyond what you're capable of doing right now, but maybe you can do something with being able to have lots of quests and goals and things like that, depending on the type of game that you want to make. That might be a little bit easier, you know? Or being able to make progress if you only have a little bit of time. Maybe your game now has like short levels or something like that where you can save progress. Um, I would also say maybe consider focusing on one or two of the elements in your game at a time, especially when you're just starting out, so that you don't get overwhelmed. And maybe even do like a major and a minor element combination. Kind of like when you go to college and you pick a major and then you pick a minor. Your main focus will be the major, but you'll add maybe a few extra classes for the minor. Same thing with the features, right? Maybe one big feature with a couple in one or two enhancing elements, right? If you don't going back to the skill thing, if you don't have the skills right now to create that feature, see if you can find some tutorials that can help you get there, right? Um, so again, back to level building, right? Maybe there are some tutorials that will show you how to build like an in-game map that that the players can explore, right? Or if you don't know how to like scroll through different screens, move the camera so that it's not all focused on one area of the room at a time. There's tutorials that can help you with that. Okay. And also think about the time. Do you have a lot of time to create something complicated, or are you more on a restricted schedule? And if there's things you want to do but you can't do them now, maybe you can work on a plan for a longer term game project. So, like, again, going back to the RPG example, that's usually a harder game for people to start out with making. So, maybe just start writing down like a a design of your ideas for an RPG so that you can work towards building that. And while you're building up your skills with simpler games, you're still going back and fleshing out this longer term game idea. All right. And the last major tip I'll have is to play more games, right? So of course this requires that you play games that other people make. And this might sound obvious, but sometimes we get so busy, and I think sometimes people still kind of look down at that, oh, you shouldn't be playing games, that's a waste of time, or I've got to work my job and I don't have time to play games, right? But if you want to be a game developer, you do need to also play games too, for a variety of reasons. But for our discussion, because it can help you to come up with your own ideas, right? Um, and when you do play the games, even if it's like your little Candy Crush game that you play when you're sitting on at the subway station waiting for the next train to come in 5 minutes, right? Even if that's all you're playing, think about it from a more developer-centric mentality with some of the questions that we asked or that we brought up in this video. All right. So start to look at the games that you play with a more developer focused mentality, right? Not just from a player perspective, but from a developer focus too. And as a player, what makes this fun, And I'll just also close with a simpler example because, like I said, RPGs are not always the best starting game. But if you've ever heard of a game called 1942, it's more of an arcade style game. It's a vertical scrolling shooter game with World War II planes. So you're moving like from the bottom of the screen up. You're controlling like a real. It's based on a real airplane called I think it's the P-38 Lightning, a old World War II plane, and you're fighting against other World War II planes from the your enemy, right? And you're moving up on the screen, and you have enemy planes coming from the top and the sides, right? And really, it's a couple of buttons. Like I said, it started as an arcade game, so you have like a shoot button, where you can fire, and then you can move. in four directions, and then I think you can in some games in that series you can get power-ups, like you can drop bombs or something like that. I don't think P-38 Lightnings drop bombs, but you get what I'm saying, right? You got like power-ups. So why do I like it? I like airplanes. I'm kind of nerdy like that. So for me, that was kind of what drew me into it. It covered something that I really liked in real life. It's also really simple to learn because the mechanics are simple. Like I said, it's just a couple of buttons and a joystick. And I also like that physical challenge of having to dodge stuff coming at you on the screen and still take down targets at the same time. You can think about like Space Invaders is kind of like a similar game, but it's all on like one like non-scrolling screen, right? So for me, I do like this game. This probably is not the type of game that I would play as much or as long as like an RPG, but it's still a great game and still a lot of fun, right? And the features, if I wanted to add some of these features to a game idea of my own, it would be easier to do some of these ideas. And I mentioned that this is a topic that interests me, so don't be afraid to look at your real life interests and see how you can fold them into a game idea of your own too. All right. Um, so hopefully this has given you a good starting point for how to start thinking about some game ideas of your own. And we'll continue on with this video series and talk more about this. And one thing I'll talk more about is that you don't necessarily want to just straight up copy a game all the time. That's not always the best idea, depending on who if you're releasing it for other people to play. But we'll talk about that more. But just for now, I don't want you to focus too much on that. Just focus on um, identifying the things in games that you like and that you would like to add to games of your own. All right. Great. I hope this was helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions or anything, and I'll see you all in the next video. All right.